Hey everyone, this is Spencer from Complete Unbox Video Games, and today in Complete and Cast episode 73, we're answering 10 questions from CiB fans. Yesterday I made a post saying, hey, what's some stuff that you would like to see us talk about on Complete and Cast? Some of the questions posed definitely deserve their own videos for it, but I found 10 here that were ones that I can probably answer, fairly quickly and put it into one video. So I thank you for everyone who put their ideas in. They were all very helpful, and let's just get started then, since we have time to go through. So Wendy R says, CiB top 5, insert topic here. Well, okay, I can just do anything then. So I'm going to go with something super simple and do favorite franchises. I'm a big fan of lists, so a lot of the stuff will be listed in order, because I just like that. So, favorite franchises, minimum 5 games, just because there's some that only have 1 or 2 that you don't know if you call it a franchise. Number 5, we have Final Fantasy. There's just such variance there that it's just really easy to put it in the 5 slot. I will say there's a pretty big power gap for me between 1 through 4 and 5. 1 through 4 could pretty much be interchanged anyway. 5 is definitely number 5. We got number 4 is Mega Man. Again, consider that what you will. Mega Man, Mega Man X, Mega Man Zero, what have you. I'm mostly thinking of the original side-scrolling kind of ones, but if you include X in there as well, it could move even higher up on the list. Number 3, we have Castlevania. Once again, I'm considering the old school ones. I'm more of a fan of the standard old school, like Nintendo, Super Nintendo ones, than I am the more Metroidvania ones. Although the game I have been playing most recently is Castlevania Circle of the Moon, which I'm quite enjoying. It's been a long time since I played that. My way of looking at it is Castlevania 4 is one of my favorite games of all time. It's just the perfect platformer. And I prefer just the pure platformness to the Symphony of the Night, Metroidvania kind of thing. So again, if I'm picking just one, I'm picking the old school one, but altogether it's number 3. Number 2, we have Silent Hill. I think enough is said. It would be number 1 if it didn't fall off pretty hard in some of its later entries. Downpour, Homecoming, not so great. Book of Memories, which we all forget exists as a Vita game. And then number 1, this one's pretty clear right now, especially with how well it's done over the course of the last couple years, is Resident Evil. Usually, I get a little bit blinded by the old school stuff, but some of the newer ones, like Village, is one of my all-time favorite Resident Evil games. I mean, we're talking even the original 2, 3, just like fantastic games. Resident Evil 4 remake, I did a ranking list, and I put that right below the S tier, which for me is incredible. So right now, with how Capcom and Resident Evil is sitting, it's definitely number 1 for me. So thank you, Wendy. I appreciate that question. And next we are going to go to Marco, who has games that defined or changed the status quo of the industry. Once again, I boiled it down to 6. I really wanted to do 5 here, but hey, it is what it is. The 6th came to me later, and I was like, you know what, it really was that important. So, although there were video games that came out before Pac-Man in 1980, Pac-Man was definitely the first to be a cultural revolution. They had a hit single on it, they had, kids' cereal, they had a TV show, just everything. It was the first video game to become more than a video game. So due to that, the just how important it was just unbelievable. I thought about Space Invaders, I thought about something like Pong, and all those are very, very important, but Pac-Man was the first one to really be more than a game. Number 2, and this has to be on anyone's list. Oh, by the way, this isn't in any order. I'm just going in chronological. Well, it is in order. It's in chronological order, not in order of importance. Number 2, I have Super Mario Bros. 1, 1995. Doesn't matter if you love or hate or indifferent towards Mario, everybody realizes that Mario Brothers was, the thing to save the video game industry after the crash in 1983 with how awful all the Atari games and all the arcade games, and there was just such nonsense. By the way, E.T. is not the worst game of all time. It's not even close, but it is the scapegoat for the 1983 crash. It was just the straw that broke the camel's back. It was the one that people were like, I'm done. But Mario Brothers 1, the NES clearly saved the video game industry, and Mario Brothers 1 being such an early release in America especially was just so important. Number 3, we're going to skip 8 years and go to Doom in 1993. Not only did it really put PC gaming into the upfront of society, But there was, a lot of questions about how violent it was, which was obviously a very important thing to people back then, not so much now. But just in general, it is still considered, one of the best FPSs ever, and it was one of the, although, id Software came out with Wolfenstein 3D before it, clearly Doom had the bigger cultural impact. I mean, you just say Doom, and people just, they get it in their head, it's Doom. You know exactly where you are, exactly where you were playing it. Number 4, we have Mario 64, 1996. I was lucky enough to play this within the first 6 months or year from when it came out. We got it for one of the Christmases. I don't know if it's the year it came out or the year after that, but I specifically remember, although there were 3D games beforehand, Mario 64 clearly defined what 3D video games would be. It was probably the biggest step ever of any game, in so much that, with Pac-Man, there were arcade games like it before, and it moved a step up. With Mario Brothers, it did so much new, but there were platformers before. This felt like the very first 3D game ever made, even though, clearly it wasn't. There was a couple years beforehand, but it did it so perfectly that it felt like, honestly, people still make 3D platformer games, and they still look at Mario 64 as the shining example. Number 5, we have Grand Theft Auto 3 in 2001. Anyone who was around back then knows how big of a deal it was. Yes, there were 2 Grand Theft Autos before it, but this was the first one to take that more cinematic view where you're looking at the character. I was about 13, 14 at the time, and I cannot even begin to tell you how big of a cultural impact it had. Again, a lot of people getting upset about, the things that you do in the game. We all know what GTA is, but sincerely, so unbelievably culturally important and changed the status quo to no, I mean, even GTA 5 or something like that sells 10, 20 times the amount of copies. GTA 3 had definitely the most impact there. And very lastly, this is the one that I added on when I was like, how did I forget this? Is Minecraft in 2011. It's hard to believe that Minecraft's only been around 12 years or so. I know it had like pre-alphas and alphas and stuff like that. But clearly Minecraft has just changed the industry to an unbelievable level. And in fact, one of the harder questions for me to answer when customers ask it is, my kids have Minecraft, and they like Minecraft, but what's something that's like Minecraft? And yes, there are things out there, but there's nothing that's exactly like Minecraft. There's nothing that does it, just as well. And, I mean, goodness, it's probably, I believe, overall, the best-selling game of all time. If not, it's very close to there, and if not, it'll be there soon. It is just unbelievably culturally important. Okay, so thank you, Marco, for that question there. I appreciate that. Next up, and this is actually a rather easy one for me, we have Ephrata asks, what era of gaming had the most challenging games? His thoughts were the 8-bit and 16-bit era. Now games are made for an experience and less of a challenge. I mean, I think your average person would definitely have to agree with that. There's something else I would like, and I totally agree with that as well. I would say if I had to pick one specific time period, it would be the 8-bit. And there's actually a reason for that. Back then, you didn't really own many games. You had an NES, you might own, like, Mario or Tetris or whatever. It was all about the rentals back then. And of course, back then, given the limitations on the technology, you didn't have nearly, as much into it. A lot of games, if you watch speedruns of, say, Ninja Gaiden or Castlevania 3 or whatever, they can be beaten 10, 20, 30 minutes. No glitches or anything, just going through it and just rocking through it. Well, if you make a game that can technically be beat in 10 minutes without any major glitches, you gotta add some difficulty to it, especially when when a game is mostly going to be sold via rental. There's a bunch of different terms for it that different people use. You could call it rental BS or whatever you want to call it, but there were a lot of games made specifically more difficult, so someone would not beat it upon their first rental back in the day. And that is, I don't know if any companies ever came out and specifically said, yes, we did that, but it's been more or less proven that is the case. And again, I understand it's one of those things where if you make a game that can be beaten in 30 minutes, someone's gonna, if it's super easy, they're gonna take it home, they're gonna beat it in 30 minutes, and they're gonna go, okay, why did I even rent this, right? But if you make it fun, but also extremely challenging, you're going to get someone that rents Castlevania 3, a very good game, a notoriously difficult game, 3, 4, or 5 times. So I think there's really no question that it's the 8-bit. You could, I guess, make an argument about 16-bit, but the moment that you got autosaves and save points in these longer games, that's the point where it goes away. Of course, there's stuff like Dark Souls nowadays, but far and wide, games use autosaves where even if you have a really difficult boss and you lose, you probably only have 5-10 minutes you have to do before you get back to that boss again. Whereas, I guess, funny story for everyone else, but not for me. Maybe 10-15 years ago, myself, Trevor, and my cousin Benjamin, we sat down and we were like, we're gonna beat Blaster Master on the NES. We're gonna do it. And when you lose all your lives, it takes you to a continue screen, and we played it pretty much all day. Well, when you're on the continue screen, it doesn't say continue 4, continue 3, whatever. But there is a limited number of continues and no password feature. So we got to the point where, like, several hours in, we go to it, and instead of giving us continue, it's just back to the main screen. And even stuff like that is just absolutely brutal because, we did not try again. We have never tried again to go past that because they were just meant to be that difficult. So thank you, Ephrata, for that question. I appreciate that. We're moving on to number 4. The single best year... Oh, this is from Travis. The single best year for video games and video game releases... I'd say this year, honestly, has a chance. And I think at the end of the year, there is a chance for that. I'm going to hold off on saying anything for 2023 due to, recency bias and stuff like that. I got it down to a top 2. And I'll just go straight into them then. So I have no order on this because I was having a really difficult time deciding. First, we have 1998. 1998 had Metal Gear Solid, Half-Life, Resident Evil 2, Ocarina of Time, Banjo-Kazooie, and Pokemon, if you're going to count this, for the first time in the US. It came out in 96 in Japan, so it's up to you if you want to count that. But even mentioning those 5, and not even going to other games in 1998 is like, holy crap, that is a Mount Rushmore of games right there. The next up, I also have 2001, where we have Halo, GTA 3, Smash Melee, MGS2, Devil May Cry 1, Final Fantasy X, Luigi's Mansion, Tony Hawk Pro Skater 3, Jak and Daxter, Ico. That was a very interesting year because usually video game systems come out and they do not hit the ground running. People all remember Mario 64 when it came out on launch day for the 64, but do you know how many other games came out that day? 1 in America. 1. And I believe it was Pilot Wings. I think Wave Race came a little bit after. But, when you look back on a full console generation, you can go, oh, okay, it had, PS2 had 4,000 games, whatever. But when you're looking at an individual year, that becomes important, especially when you're looking at the life cycle of video game systems. So even the PS1 and the N64, great systems, great libraries, did not hit the ground running. PS1 came out in 1995. Most of the 1995 releases that you'll remember are not like the all-time classics. You didn't get to that until pretty much 1997 with Final Fantasy VII. And then a lot of the other really, really well-known ones, your later Final Fantasies, your Metal Gear Solid, Legend of Dragoon, Silent Hill, even Resident Evil 1 was in 1996. It did not really hit the ground running, whereas in 2001, and this is a very specifically interesting year for me, the PS2 did come out in 2000, but it did really hit the ground running. It's really rare for a lot of the best games in a system to come out within a year, just about a calendar year of a system coming out. And honestly, that happened for the GameCube as well. The Xbox to a little bit less, but really with the Xbox, all you really had to have is Halo, and that pushed it so far. So again, I'm between 1998 and 2001. A lot of people will also say 2004. And that was right in the depths of PS2, GameCube, and Xbox, which a lot of people nowadays consider to be the best console generation. You have 2007, somewhat early. That's a really unique year because that's somewhat early in the 360 life, maybe about 2 years in. But the PS2, GameCube, and not so much Xbox were still coming out with games at that point. So you had the latter releases. I think God of War 2 was 2007 for PS2, but then you also had stuff like Bioshock, your Halo 3s, I believe Gears of War 1 was 2007. So that's an interesting one where you get the amalgamation of both the ending of a great generation and the starting of a great generation. And a lot of people will also say 2013 as well. You have stuff like Last of Us, Bioshock Infinite. Clearly, that was at the very tail end of the PS3 360 generation, so they were getting a lot of great releases out there. That's just something that's I'm not an early adapter of video game consoles. I really never have been. I think the last one we got within the first year upon release was a PS2. And that, of course, that I don't believe... I believe we got that as a gift. I don't even believe I had to, get that myself. I usually wait like a year, 2, 3 years to for the library to build up. So it's very interesting that most of the years that are considered great or a couple years, 2, 3, 4 years into a system's lifespan. And that's what we're actually seeing right now with the PS5 and Xbox Series X and the Switch, which is its own thing. 3 years after those systems come out, you're getting some really baller games. So I want to thank Travis again for that question. I really appreciate it. We're moving on to number 5. We have biggest early access Steam flops. All of them. I will say I'm very biased on this in that I don't believe I've ever played an early access game. I don't believe in paying for something before it's done. I know that a lot of people see it and they get really excited and they can see, hey, if I put some, if I buy this, if I put some money into it, maybe it'll become something great. And I'm certain that some have. But a lot of the ones that I see are like they start with this early access, something goes wrong, the company shuts down, they realize it's not the game they want it to be, whatever the case. A lot of them just end up failing. So you have stuff like DayZ, Cube World, some of the more infamous ones. Of course, DayZ over years became like a serviceable game. But a lot of these early access ones, early access for me is like, no thanks. Like if you want to do it when it's in like beta mode, beta to me is like it is almost done. It's like the cake's about to come out of the oven. You just got to add the frosting to it. Great. Early access is like, okay, yeah, we put the ingredients in the bowl. It's about to go in the oven, or it's been in the oven 5 minutes, and you're like, there's a lot that can go wrong there. You can leave it in too long, take it out, kind of thing. Awful analogy, but it works. So yes, I would probably go ahead and say all of them for me. Thank you to Eric for that question. I appreciate that. Next up, we have Jeremy, who says, a Star Wars day, just kind of a Star Wars post, which games were the best, and, where they're headed now. So, I'm not the biggest fan of Star Wars. I can say that my 2 favorite Star Wars games by far, if you want to count the one as one series, is the Super Star Wars series on the Super Nintendo, and which... made by LucasArts. They're just fantastic games. There is one big flaw with them, and that's the difficulty. I think a lot of people are to the point where like they're on their bucket list of games they wanna beat, and they're just so hard. All 3 of them. And the fact that they came out with all 3 of them, and they all improve in certain ways, and they all feel very much like Star Wars. They don't feel like they were like cashed in kind of thing. Lucasfilms, people don't mention it super much nowadays, but that was a fantastic developer, and I don't know if they were a publisher, but definitely a developer back in the day. And my all-time favorite Star Wars game is Knights of the Old Republic 1. Not a huge fan personally of the Mass Effect style kind of games. I have no problem with it, but the games that take 40, 50, 100 hours to beat, I generally kind of stay away from, just because I would rather play more bite-sized stuff, more story-based stuff, like a Last of Us, for example. You can beat that in 10, 12 hours, but it's like very story-based, kind of more linear. I kind of prefer more of say the old God of Wars to the new God of Wars, because the old God of Wars much more streamlined, still has a lot of story, still has a lot of difficulty, but it's less meandering for me. But KOTOR is one of those few games that are in that Mass Effect, BioWare kind of thing that I just think is awesome. Again, I'm not the biggest Star Wars guy. I love Empire Strikes Back. I think it's a fantastic movie. I think Star Wars Episode 4: A New Hope is pretty good, and I think the essentially beginning and very end of Return of the Jedi is fantastic. Middle, obviously, not so great. And I like the prequels for the memes. I could not watch them again. They are so boring. They have soul, and they have a lot of world building, great characters, but they're simply just two characters walking along, talking in a hallway behind a green screen, and Lucas clearly needed somebody there to tell him, hey, this is enough, we need to stop, but he had just yes men there, and that was clearly documented, and won't even go to the sequels. I'll say one thing, Rise of Skywalker, it has some of the best meme potential of anything ever. Somehow, Palpatine returned it. Don't question it, just is what it is. So, those are my two favorite. Again, I'm not the biggest Star Wars guy, but going into the future, after Battlefront 2 really messed up its original release, it has course corrected, and people do like that game quite a bit. And Star Wars Jedi Survivor or Fallen Order and Survivor are both fantastic Souls-type games, so there is reason for hope in the Star Wars community. So thank you, Jeremy, for that. That was the 6th question. Number 7, we have Tyler, who asks, which games have you never been able to beat despite trying extensively? This is a really good one. I like this one quite a bit, because I do have a bucket list of games that I've tried and failed to beat. I originally had 5, but I'm going to add my 6th right now, and this is in order. The 6th is any of those Super Star Wars games, since we just went over them. I really want to beat those, but they are just so difficult. I don't want to use cheat codes. I don't want to use emulators. For any of these, I just want to physically beat them. Game on cartridge on TV. Ugh. Just so difficult. Number 5, I'm not even the biggest TMNT guy, but I really want to beat TMNT 1 for the NES. That's just one of those games where I feel like once you learn it, you should be able to handle it better, but years later, there are so many choke points in that game. The dam, losing one of your turtles is forever kind of thing. It's the Technodrome, it's just brutal. Number 4, Zombies Ate My Neighbors for Super Nintendo. Fantastic game, very difficult game, very long game. I always get to the big baby boss, which is probably 15, 20 levels in. I can usually barely beat that, but then I'll lose on the next, or maybe the second level after that. I don't know how you're supposed to. It has like 60, 70 stages. I don't know how you're supposed to do it. It is unbelievably difficult game. Fantastic game. I would really love to beat it sometime, but honestly, good luck without putting... I don't want to put passwords in. I want to be able to beat the thing. Number 3, this is where it's getting to the point I've been trying for literally 20 years. We have Fester's Quest for NES. Realize it's not a super great game, but it's one of those games I really... I just want to prove that I can beat. It's one of those where you really have to learn exactly where to go, because for not being a huge map, it's very confusing. You go into those buildings and you have to do the first person through it, and everything looks the same. The sewers that you have to go through to get to one upper area to the other all look the same. Pretty difficult game. It's one of those where I would have to legitimately sit down, chart it out, and go in here, go in here, go in here, and I just cannot put myself up to that. It's just one of those games you want to beat it to say, I did it. Never again, screw this game. Number 2 is a fantastic game, actually. Castlevania 3 for NES. I've never beaten it. I don't know anyone personally that has, without save states or cheats or whatever. Castlevania 3 is probably the best looking game on the Nintendo, if not top 5, top 10. Has potentially the best soundtrack on the Nintendo. It is a really fantastic game. It has one fatal flaw, and that's the difficulty. The difficulty is just too much. I can't get more than 3-4 levels in, and I can beat... I can get to, as an example, and Castlevania 4 is an easier game, but I can get to the very end stages in Castlevania 4 without losing a life. The only time I might lose a life is there's a part where you have to do some platforming and the platforms fall underneath you, and sometimes that'll get me. But I could beat Castlevania 4 in 0 to maybe 2 lives, depending on what happens. And I can't get past the 4th or 5th level in Castlevania 3. I can't do it. It is such an unbelievably difficult game, and unlike Fester's Quest, there's not just learn this secret shortcut, bro. It's not like that. It is just difficulty. And the odd thing about Castlevania 3 is the Japanese version is much easier than the American version, which is weird, because, for instance, Mega Man 2 is much harder in Japan than it is in America. That's why the American version has normal and difficult. In Japan, it's just the difficult version. That's the only version they have. And number 1, this one's a personal one for me. We have Simpsons Bart's Nightmare for Super Nintendo. Oh, man. I've been trying to beat this game for 20 years. This is number 1 on my list of games I want to do as a Let's Play, and just sit down and just put it in the system, put the cartridge in the system, and just beat the dang thing. Get an A. If you're unfamiliar with the game, essentially you're in a Dreamverse. You have to go around on these streets that go on forever. When you see a paper roll by, you have to jump on it. When you jump on it, you get to choose between 2 different levels. The levels all have different, like, incantations to, like, dreams. For instance, one Bart is Godzilla, one is Indiana Jones, one he's kind of like Radioactive Man, or Bartman, whatever they would call it. Individually, the levels aren't super difficult, but when you put it all together, including that exterior dream world, it's just unbelievably difficult. And you go until you lose all of your lives, essentially, and I want to do it where you can get... Once you get all the pieces of paper, which are your homework, your notebook, whatever, then you get an A+. And I want to do it so bad, but there's no shortcuts to it. There's no anything. You just have to. It's just pure skill. And I really, really want to do that. So thank you, Tyler. I appreciate the question. That was awesome to go through. Next up, we have Dustin, who asks, what canceled games got you most disappointed or frustrated? I have 3 specifically. So first for me would be Fear Effect Inferno for the PS2. I love Fear Effect 1 and 2. I think that they're really unique horror/action games. The gimmick of those is you don't have a life bar per se, you have a fear bar, and as things happen, as you get hit, as enemies almost appear to you, it goes up and it'll go down depending on how you do. It's not it's kind of like a life bar, but it's not necessarily a life bar. Very vulgar game, but also very hilarious game. It has a lot to do with memes of like ancient China, ancient Japan. Those I always forget what they're called, but those hopping ghost monsters that kind of hop like this and have the big hats. I apologize for not knowing the name, but just a ton of stuff like that. And Fear Effect Inferno was supposed to be just Fear Effect 3, PS2, good to go. And then Eidos got pretty good amount into it and just canceled it, and that one still hurts to this day. They ended up making another Fear Effect game years down the line, and it's more like one of those like Shadowrun kind of games where your camera angle's kind of like looking down here, almost like God Mode, but on the side. And it's just not even close to the same, so I'm really bummed about that one. Number 2, I have Mega Man Legends 3. Love Legends 1 and 2. Clearly, Capcom, despite doing very well nowadays, had a period of time in the mid-2000s, early 2010s, where they were just bumbling, just everywhere. Canceled a bunch of Mega Man games. Clearly, they haven't been good to Mega Man in the past 10 years or so, besides Mega Man 11. And Mega Man Legends 3, even though it was a 3DS game, or was going to be a 3DS game in a handheld, I just wanted to see where that series continued. I was so excited. And number 1, this is pretty easy for me. It's Silent Hills, the one with Kojima, the one that infamously, the PT playable trailer, teaser? What teaser, probably playable teaser for PS4. The one that is just an unbelievable demo that just blew everyone away. And then, of course, Konami did what Konami does, and they screwed everything up. They took PT down. You can't play it anymore. I assume PS4s that have PT on it still go for a decent amount of money. And, you know, it was Kojima and Guillermo del Toro, if I remember correctly. And Norman Reedus as the head guy, I don't really care about that much. But just Kojima in charge of a Silent Hill game would have been really interesting. And it's such a bummer we didn't get that. So thank you, Dustin, for the question. I appreciate it. The last two, kind of go together, and they have to do with digital and physical. First of all, Corey says, very sarcastically, of course, why even bother releasing a physical copy of a game that just starts a download when inserted? And yeah, I totally agree. It's a shame when the disc is essentially just a gatekeeper for like to know that you have it, and essentially you still have this 200 gigabyte download and all this nonsense. We're beyond this. It just goes into the early access kind of thing of companies just not releasing games in a good finished state. Which, by the way, that is going to be one of the subjects of a full subject of an upcoming episode I want to do. I want to do it with a guest or two, so I can get some conflicting opinions on that, not just me rambling. But yeah, it's just awful. There were a couple of cases over the past 10 years of physical games that released physically, but inside there was not a disc, there was a download code. I believe PUBG for Xbox One was one of them. There was also a Tomb Raider game for PS3 maybe where they did that, and DuckTales for PS3 I believe was one as well, the DuckTales remaster. What's the deal? I mean, come on, right? Like, it's like either release the game, in a finished state, or don't. Come on, don't mess with this like digital physical kind of thing. Like, just have these discs have enough space to have everything on them easily. Yes, day one patch, whatever, I guess, it's acceptable, whatever, but when the game itself isn't even on the dang disc, that also hurts a lot for digital game preservation as well, which is another big subject I want to head to. I can't get into on this one. But when you have that, and when you have it being gatekept by this company, the disc itself, there are so many problems that can go wrong. Okay, you just want to play the dang game and their servers are down, and their servers are being slow. Well, guess you can't play. There's just so many problems with that. So thank you, Corey, for bringing that up. I'm not going to answer this like super, super deep because this is stuff we're going to go into at a deeper one for one of the following episodes. And very lastly, we have Anthony, who says, I think digital games should be cheaper than physical formats, as there is no distribution or as much marketing involved in the former. And I totally agree as well. I know it's not a question, but it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, absolutely, you hit the nail on the head. Now, I'm very biased in this, and I can't pretend that I'm not. I download digital games, There are times where there's something that's only available digital, or something, for instance, I didn't feel like pulling out my GB ASP. This is just a couple days ago. I downloaded the Castlevania Advance Collection on Steam. It's like $15 for all 3 games. Great deal considering how crazy hard to find the GBA cartridges are. I'm not fully against it. What I'm fully against is the customers not having options, which is why we at the store do not carry digital-only PS5s or Xbox Series S's, which are digital-only. I feel like at that point, Sony, Microsoft, whomever, has you exactly where they want you, and you have you have one option, instead of having multiple options. If you come into CiB or GameStop or whatever, and a physical copy of something is $40 and it's digitally for $20, great, you have an option there. You are totally able to do that then. But if the physical copy is $40 and the digital is $60, then, and you have only a digital-only system, you either you buy it like that or you don't play it. Call of Duty is a great example. World War II is a fantastic one. Not considered a great Call of Duty game by pretty much everyone. You can get a used copy anywhere for about $10. And right now, the only way that you can buy it on the storefronts is $60. Now, they try to get away with it by giving you all the gold, all the extra DLC and stuff. What if you just want to play the campaign? What if you just want to play it kind of casually? Hey, if you see something for $10 a game, I'll try this. And if you don't like it, whatever, right? Not the biggest deal. But if you download this $60 game, 5-year-old game, by the way, 5-6 years old, and don't like it, And the fact that, as Anthony, without getting too far off of his statement/question, why, if a physical game is $70, is it also $70 on the dot digitally? I think that's just absolute greed by the companies. I understand that Sony takes a percentage. Let's say it's From Software makes it, right? And it's on Sony's platform. Sony's going to take a percentage, but you know what? Sony's going to take a percentage anyway because it's on the PS5 on a physical disc anyway. There are those other mouths to feed. I understand with physical distribution, there's the stores like us, there's our distributors, there's other mouths to feed. I get it. So with something that's more direct, why can't you make it 70 physical, 60 digital, 50 digital? I feel like even if you did $10 off, you would still get more money in the long run. So, obviously, as someone who's super biased and is totally against these companies, going the way of they're all clearly trying to go, except for Nintendo, going the way of digital only. The fact that they refuse to lower it to a more standard price is good for essentially everyone else on the food chain. Do I know why they don't do it? Yeah, greed. Is there any possible reason they shouldn't just go, $10 off kind of thing? In my opinion, no. I feel like everyone, besides obviously the stores, will get more money. And I'll probably have a whole episode on digital versus physical. There are, of course, positives and negatives of both. I don't try to pretend that there's not, but when a new game comes out and it's 70 digital, 70 physical, and that digital one is tied to that account forever, if Sony ever decides PS5 isn't online anymore, okay, You probably can't download that anymore. Can you sell it to a friend? No. Can you sell it to a store? No. There are just so many limitations, and that's why the Xbox One failed, because famously in 2013, they were going to put limitations, and people were like, oh, no. So that's a subject for another time. So, guys, I want to thank you so much. I know I've been rambling on too long here. I want to thank you all 10 of you, for the questions. As I say right over here, if you have any further questions or subjects you would like to see answered, let me know below. Maybe I can get enough to do a part 2 of this. I really enjoy hearing from you guys. I really enjoy seeing the questions. And honestly, a lot of times it makes me think. I might have preconceived notions, but if someone has, a really good point into something, I want to do some research into that. I honestly never really thought about the whole 2023 as an example being one of the best year for gaming, but honestly, that's a good point. It's one of those where by the end of it, if we're looking 3-4 years from now, it could be there. So I love hearing from you guys. So, all right, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thank you for watching. Subscribe, blah, blah, blah. See ya.